Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the University of Colombo School of Computing Alumni Association, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this enlightening panel discussion, From Strategy to Results, the Execution Roadmap for a 5 billion digital industry. Organized by the UCSC Alumni Association, this discourse convenes eminent leaders from government, industry, and academia to deliberate on pragmatic solutions for Sri Lanka's IT sector expansion. With ambitious national objectives and a dynamically evolving digital ecosystem, today's discussion aspires to bridge the gap between strategy formulation and tangible execution, laying the foundation for sustainable industry expansion. We are privileged to host a distinguished lineup of experts who will share their perspectives on policies, challenges, and prospects shaping Sri Lanka's IT landscape. To officially inaugurate today's proceedings, I now invite the President of the UCSC Alumni Association, Mr. Anushka Mendis, to extend his welcome and share a few thoughts with us.
Very good evening to all of you, my dear ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the UCSC alumni, I would like to warmly welcome you all for this esteemed panel discussion organized by our committee, which will be an annual event hereinafter. Our chief guest and the head panelist, Dr. Hans Wijayasuriya, the chief advisor to the President of Sri Lanka on the digital economy. Our panelists, director, co-founder of Creative Software, Mr. Sushena Ranatunga, the director of UCSC, Dr. Ajantha Athukorale, our moderator, leading corporate trainer, business leader, Dr. Nirmal, the distinguished guests, invitees, and my dear friends. Let me take a few moments of the thought process of organizing this event. If we take a moment and observe our country the past few years, we've been and we continue to be in a revolution of different forms in political, economical, social, and it goes on. And meanwhile, the world is on a run on a revolution of technology. So we thought for our country to go from where we are to a developed nation, we also should have a revolution in that form with that flavor as well. So we wanted to bring together the players, the co-workers, the entrepreneurs, all the stakeholders in the industry and get that understanding where the government and the industry is striving forward. So for that, we bring together today from the strategy to results, the execution roadmap of this 5 billion digital industry. So on another note, being alumni of a government state university who has been raised through the free education as well in the country, we also thought that we also have a game to play. We also have a responsibility to pay back to the country in different formations. Of course, we get the dollars, but that's not enough, I would say. We should always go for the perfection. We should always go an extra mile and figure out the ways that we could support the industry, support the country in that sense. So that's the reason that we are organizing this. So again, I warmly welcome you all and enjoy this evening and take your own inspirational insights and execute those things in your space and contribute to the country as leaders. So as I personally believes technology is a art, leadership is a passion. The right combination when it comes together, it brings you innovation. Thank you. Enjoy the day.
Thank you, Mr. Anush Mendis, for that warm welcome and setting the stage for today's discussion. Now, we transition to the focal point of today's event, the panel discussion. To steer this dialogue, we are privileged to have an esteemed moderator with us, Dr. Nirmal de Silva. Dr. de Silva is a respected business leader, entrepreneur, and corporate trainer with vast experience in digital transformation and strategy. He is a multi-award winning business professional with nearly 2 decades of C-level experience. He has led numerous multinational and Fortune 500 companies across technology, real estate, advisory services, and consultancy industries. Dr. De Silva currently serves as a co-founder and CEO of Paramount Reality, which provides services across Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, please extend a warm welcome to Dr. Nirmal de Silva. Dr. De Silva will now introduce the panelists and orchestrate the discussion. Over to you, Dr. Nirmal de Silva.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and it's great to see our audience on a Thursday evening. I have a privilege of introducing 3 wonderful gentlemen who are spearheading technology in different spheres. We got an industry leader, we got an industry leader cum policymaker now, and then we've got academia who is helping either create policymakers or industry leaders. So without further ado, may I call upon Dr. Wijayasuriya. Everybody knows him, prominent figure in the industry. The university's very own Dr. Ajantha Athukorale, who is the director of UCSC, and Mr. Sushena Ranatunga, who is the director of Creative Solutions. So today's topic is strategy to results. When I got the brief from the organizing committee at the outset, I must thank you for inviting me to be part of it. I thought to myself over the weekend, what would the participants expect? Why would they attend on a Thursday evening a program? So it came to me, there are probably 4 reasons. Reason number 1, they really do not believe that we can achieve a 5 billion economy. They want to really understand what is the mantra behind it. That's one type of audience. The second type of audience is that they have nothing better to do on a Thursday evening, and this is a good time to come and listen to eminent speakers. The third objective could be they are part of this alumni, so whatever the alumni does, they have to be part of it, right? Number 3. Number 4 are people who really want to play an active role based on the roadmap, based on the blueprint, and possibly getting a little bit of inspiration post today. So regardless of that, my job is to be the moderator. Some of the subjects are going to be tricky, touchy, and feely a little bit. So we'll take it up. Dr. Hans, now we see wonderful numbers. We see 5 billion, we see 15 billion, anywhere between that as well, and we've heard this roadmap a number of times. In single sense, මේක ඇත්තටම කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? මේක තව ප්‍රෝඩාවක්ද? Or do we really have an execution plan? Or is this Dr. Hans's plan that we are going to put into a national policy?
That's the question. ප්‍රෝඩාවක් නෙමෙයි.
That's good.
අදිෂ්ඨානයක් තියෙනවා, ඒ වගේම අභිලාෂයක් තියෙනවා. So, get back to the numbers. These two numbers, I think numbers are numbers. You're very right. But all of us know that you need a target and you need an audacious target, an ambitious target in order to wake up the system and plan and set a blueprint to achieve that number, however audacious it is. All of us who are in business or have been in business would know that's part and parcel of setting ambition. So the 5 billion is for the digital industry to take the exports from where it is today around 1.8 billion to 5 billion. So let's call it a 3x. Leave a little more ambition to get to 5.4. So a 3x growth over a 5-year period. The digital economy is an even more ambitious goal of going from around 3 billion where it is today to 15 billion. So that's a 5x. So the targets for the team, for myself as well, is this 3x and 5x, and a 2x actually from the growth of the human capital base, which is from around 100,000 to 200,000. So these are good multipliers to wake up to every morning, 2x, 3x, 5x. Do they jive? Do these numbers jive? Yes, because the digital economy actually comprises of multiple components. If you look at the very narrowest definition of a digital economy, you look at ICTs, the telecommunication services, the connectivity services, and software and hardware and connectivity equipment around that. That component of the GDP is about today, like I said, around 3%, including the augmentation of that, which is the digital platforms like the ride-hailing platforms, e-commerce sites, and transactions which happen in the digital space. Now the real game changer comes when you move from this second tier of digital economy all the way to having a increment or should I say an invasion of digital practices into all industries and services across the economy. So you look at transport, tourism, agriculture, etc., where you have digital tools, you have digital raw materials such as data, digital infrastructures like cloud and so on to really transform each of the industries. Then you get an exponential lift in the size of the digital economy. And that also correlates into the growth rate of the overall economy. So if you, difficult to explain it with my hands, but I'll try. If you look at a 2x2 kind of matrix, and you look at on one axis the degree of penetration of digital economy into the main economy. Is it 3%, 5%, 10%, all the way to 20, 25%? And on the other axis, you look at GDP growth uplift. What has been seen in many countries is that higher this penetration of digital into the economy, the higher the uplift you get on top of business as usual growth. So if you're looking at, say, an ambition of 4 to 5% CAGR in overall economy growth, then our ambition as a digital industry should be to enable, by penetrating the economy, enable that 4 or 5% to go to 6 or 7%. Now that will really translate to absolute dollars into the economy, wealth, and well-being for the country. So the targets have been thought through. And for all of us, including myself who took on this challenge, we really need to look at why didn't It happened before.
Right.
And maybe you'll have questions about that later, but just to assure you that none of us think that we have fallen from the stars. We are well aware that there have been far more competent, far more expert people than, certainly than myself, who have been here before. So there have to be differences to make this magic come around. And one is to closely examine what might have gone wrong before, what could be done better, and also to recognize that there's a lot of good digitalization and digital transformation work that has already been done. And what you should not do really is to undo the good work that has been done.
Which has been one of the country's drawbacks as well. When there are policy changes, we tend to create new barriers while trying to unlock others. Dr. Hans, just another follow-up question, because then I would directly want to delve into Dr. Ajantha. Now, in order to meet this 5 billion magical number, are we looking at it from an exponential workforce growth? Are we looking at it from an infrastructure perspective? There's a lot of thought going on from industry leaders that we need to come into productization. We need to create IP-based products. We have so much of a knowledge-based service economy only. What is your thought process around that?
Yes, I think I would say we should shift the needle in the direction of product and IP. For sure, I think we are relatively weak on that front. And later on we can discuss why that is. But also we have to recognize that the world is changing, the marketplace, and Sushena in particular I think would know much more than I do on this, that global demand now is moving away from simple cost arbitrage and simple automation, more in the direction of, on one hand, trust, and on the other hand, agility, and the ability of a particular supplier destination to keep up with technology evolution and to be ahead of the curve. So innovation, being ahead of the curve, and also the trust and governance. So I think buyers are increasingly looking at for instance, data protection laws, your internet-related laws, your cybersecurity. These are areas which buyers are now and investors are looking at. So I think Sri Lanka, we have a wealth of competence and a wealth of assets in this area. But we need to reposition for these new trends on the buyer landscape.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ajantha, Dr. Hans talked about new trends. New trends, to observe that, identify gaps in the marketplace, you need to have skills. As a fellow academic myself, one of the biggest issues that we get is academia is not ready to build the skills required for the modern era. So much so, even in this university, where you churn out brilliant students, there's still no incubator center for startups. What is your thought on that? Are we ready?
Yeah, I think on that first, I would like to say that, as Dr. Hans said, like, okay, we need to increase the number in 2x. However, we are not looking at like massive numbers because we are not a huge population. So it's like because of that, we have to keep that the niche quality, what we are trying to do, because that's where like I think we are labeled, I think, in the world as, because you can see a lot of R&D is happening in Sri Lanka. That's where like we started way back 30 years back when IFS came as well. So I think first with the numbers, we have to make sure that the quality has to be maintained. That is what we are good at. But when graduates are being produced, so we have to make sure that we stick to the international guidelines. So that, let's say, like in computing, we saw our main guidelines, we use like IEEE ACM guidelines for curriculum, so that if we try to focus not to increase the numbers as we wish or as the demand comes in, but we have to make sure that the products that we put out is quality and they can make. So that's then coming back to your the question that you asked. Yes, we have to make sure that our syllabuses are aligned and are up to date. So it's like, I can tell with my experience at UCSC, every 3 to 5 years, we do syllabus update. So without that, I think this field, we can't go. So we have to make sure that we always align with IEEE ACM guidelines, as well as, I think, to tell you, like University Grant Commission, I'm talking with respect to the state universities, has mandated IEEE ACM guidelines to be when curriculums have been designed. So that's a good thing. And so with that, when we create, so yes, we need to slowly increase the numbers, the workforce requirement for that demand. But I think it's not, again, I feel that it's not mere numbers, even that good quality graduates that we produce. But then your next question, like, we have to make sure that like there are enough entrepreneurs and then startups happening. That is what I think this number 200,000 will be all inclusive, right? Because sometimes people feel that the 200,000, there's a demand from the IT workforce, and we can keep on producing. So that's not going to happen. Like again, if we just keep on producing, and if the quality is not being maintained, of course, like I think our IT industry also will fall, as well as the demand or the niche that we had will not be there. So yes, one thing is missing is the incubator, giving help to the startups. But however, I think, so I have been here now as a senior lecturer from 2002 onwards at UCSC. But in the last few years, like I would say like 5 to 6, 7 years, like there are quite a lot of students who are doing startups. So that's a good sign. Sometimes like some people have their own companies by the second year, and they have some customers as well. So that's a good way, but of course, like I think, again, when we look at it from the curriculum perspective, so we are more aligned to give them the technological or the computing background. But of course, there are a lot of missing parts who are startup, like, so there are quite a lot of things they want to know other than the technology part. So it's where like I think we need, so that now we are trying to do through our enhancement courses to try to give that program, and also like our UCSC alumni is doing a great work because we have quite a vibrant of our graduates who are working in top leading institutes here as well as overseas. So they are also coming and giving our students that guidelines. So that is required. And with that, we have to get some, I think Dr. Hans is here, so ask the government and the Digital Economy Ministry to give some support for the startups. Because I think as universities, public and private, we can produce, like that's where like, okay, we have to be monitored. That's where like UGC is doing that, and the quality assurance units are there to maintain our quality and see whether we are doing the right thing. But however, yeah, that support is required, and so that the students will have more accessibility to have their own startups. But just before they graduate, if they can have at least their startup happening rather than having customers with them, that will be good. And that's where like I think needs some help, as well as I think not everything can be done by the government, that we have to understand that as well. But then the private, the entities, the companies should come and work in, I would say, relationship with like, on research it can be, and try to give some students also help. Of course, they also can get it back, some feedback, and also like the required thing that they're looking at. So that the support is required. So if we do that, probably, yes, we can get that, the niche, the IT talent pool that we are looking at, as well as out of that maybe 20 to 40%, maybe 50% are entrepreneurs, and they have their, because that's where like I think even in my, the alumni itself, like they have like their own companies, they are working now. Some of our students, that's good to see that, right? And we would like to see they are going higher and higher and bringing dollars to the country. That is what, so that's one thing, and we have to go into.
Yeah. I think it's important to have startups, but I think the key, as you mentioned, is the scale. How do you scale them? How do you get them on their feet? Also, I believe Dr. Ajantha played technological diplomacy to his best. So essentially, Dr. Hans, what he was trying to say is get them more involved in the discussions and the policy making so that there can be a right fit. That's essentially what he mentioned. So for the audience, can I have a raise of hands of how many of you all are in industry? Okay, overwhelming. And how many of you all have your own startup? Okay, good. So we have more than 50%. So this goes to you, Sushena. For a startup to thrive in a country like Sri Lanka, with the global opportunity, it's all about positioning. Many years ago, you decided to position your company into a global landscape. This is not easy for a startup. They need to identify what is their strength and what is the gap that they are going to address. How can a startup, how can an industry, taking your experience into account, address that?
Well, Nirmal, let me first thank UCSC Alumni Association for inviting me to this panel, and I think it's timely to have discussions like this. Before going into that, I think I must mention something because I have to mention two things. One is the topic that we are addressing today, that is the target that government, the new government has set, 5 billion target, very ambitious target that's good for both sides, I think, for the government as well as for the private sector. At the same time, our industry is stepping into a new era, I would say, with AI and all that. The landscape is changing in a direction that we were not expecting few years back. So things are changing rapidly or dramatically, I would say. So we need to work together, the universities, government, private sector, all of us should work together to address the changes as well as the challenges that, or the goals that we have set. For your question, to start a company, product company. Now we have two types of companies. When you take the IT industry, we have two types of companies. Services companies are there, and then the product companies are there. In Sri Lanka at the moment, we are mainly in the services sector, I can say that. And when it comes to revenue generation, foreign revenue and all that, probably doctor can correct if I'm wrong, about 80%, 70-80% must be coming from the services sector. Now, we need to change that to the product sector. So that should happen. Now, starting a company, the question you asked is a very difficult question. Now, whether if you are going to start a service company, you have to decide whether you are going to start a services company or a product company. Right? To start a product company, first and foremost, you should have a good idea, product idea. Right? We can see a lot of nice ideas coming out from universities in this part of the world as well. But developed countries have taken those products, especially from universities and all that. They have taken like the incubation centers and all that are there in place. That has been there for some time, and they have taken it to the market, and now they are established. We are also, I think, we can see slowly moving in that direction. 20 years or so, 20, 30 years back, we didn't have university students basically were not that keen in starting their own businesses. But now we see a change there. We can see a lot of people now. We saw lot of hands going up here. So if you take 1999 or 2000, the time that we started, we didn't see that much interest from our batchmates to start their own companies or anything like that. So to start a company, product company, you should ideally, I think you should first find the idea and a customer. So I can take an example, I think Millennium IT, if you take, is it okay to mention the names of company? Because they started 2 products, if I'm not mistaken, at the beginning with Colombo Stock Exchange as well as with Dialog, the telecom billing system also they initially started, but the stock market system, they found a client and then they started developing. So that's an ideal situation to start a product company. You should have a customer. You can't develop the product, the idea that you have, you can't just develop that product and look for a customer. Because that is where people go wrong. So I myself have done, we have done that. Like we initially started in 99 when the dot-com boom was happening. We wanted to develop a B2B platform, 98, B2B platform for the jewelry industry, for the manufacturers and retailers. We thought that was a very nice idea with a US partner. I started developing that product, but later we realized that people are not ready to trade jewelry online at that time. So idea was very nice because manufacturers can see, retailers can see what manufacturers are developing and they can do trading online. And we launched the product and we were waiting to see the transactions, we were waiting, but very few transactions happened. So then we had to change the total idea. So product idea was basically not a great idea at that time, but now it is happening. So you have to basically, if you have a good idea and also a client is ready to accept it and have a test ground for you to develop it, and if you can cover your costs also partly with that revenue that you are generating from them, that will be the ideal situation for a product company to start from my point of view. Because if you start with a lot of venture capital money and all that, then you will be in a bit of trouble. If the product can't fly, then it will be a problem. Services companies, again, my advice should start very small. Now we started with 2 people at the beginning. We didn't borrow money. We always played a very safe game. What we earned, we spent, and gradually we grew to now about 700 people altogether. So that's the model that I can suggest. I don't know whether I answered the question that you asked. So services and product companies, I think that's the advice that I can give.
Thank you, Sushena. Moving to you, Dr. Hans. Now, the vision is very clear, right? What do we want to achieve? Now, under the play to win strategy, the concept is very simple. Where do you want to play and how do you play to win? So that part is somewhat unclear. I think majority of the audience here wants to learn how do we play to win. And then when we decide how do we play to win, how do we brutally and ruthlessly execute it to ensure that we reach that vision? Can you enlighten us on that?
I think the answer differs or is different for the 2 targets. The digital economy target is primarily an internal digital economy, part of which is the export, IT exports industry. If the 5 billion comes from here, it's a boost or a boon to the digital economy overall. So I'll just carry on from where Sushena left off on the digital industry first. I think he brought up some excellent points. One, have a clear problem to solve. From the startup perspective, don't build something and then look for the problem, but solve a problem, and generally identifying a problem means there's a customer. And it could be a single customer, or it could be an entire segment or a part of the economy which needs your solution. Second is also look at the scalability of your solution. Because if you can't scale, then exactly what you pointed out, Nirmal, that scale makes the winners. And if you're looking at audacious targets and sort of brutal approaches to success, you have to scale. So here, I think, assuming that we put a tick on both those, you have a scalable solution and you have a solution which solves a problem. And like Sushena said, you have a good idea and it's differentiable. It's something unique and you have it. Now next, I think where we as a country, if we are to punch above our weight in this digital industry, in terms of being a leader in exports, etc., we have to have a way of addressing markets outside Sri Lanka. Because in most cases, the market size in Sri Lanka will be a limiting factor. Sure. And that same idea, born in a larger market, maybe not executed even as well as executed in Sri Lanka. The same idea, because it's parallel thinking now. I think none of us really come up with a unique idea that no one else comes up with it. Across the world, you're probably looking at 100 parallel initiatives on the same thing. So who wins? The party that wins will be one generally in a market which capitalizes on your scaling capability, or you can capitalize on the size of the market, and or that you're able to get enough investment and what I would call failure capital, because it's not success capital that really matters, it's failure capital. People willing to put money behind you without the high probability of success, and that's where you win. So there are some problems that we have to address here. One is, how do we facilitate our successful startups to go overseas early in the cycle, to attack foreign markets? You brought up MIT. I think it's a very good example because they had a world-class product, but they got bought out, I think, for $30 million, that product. 50 million or something. Yes. So, it wasn't a huge number. It wasn't anywhere close to a unicorn. But that product went out, and then that same product is now in, I think, well over 50% of stock exchanges across the world in the hands of London Stock Exchange. So that is one play out. How do we solve the problems which resulted in that outcome versus a Sri Lankan company registered here, bringing the wealth back to this country, having achieved the same thing of penetrating stock exchanges across the world? What's the difference? And that is what I think as a team we are really trying to address piece by piece. So there may be certain regulations which we need to look at around capital mobility in terms of where invested capital can go. Is it only into Sri Lanka? Can you diversify earlier? What are the controls around that? What are the success criteria that you can apply to create startups, or not only startups, even established companies who are able to go overseas to win fast? So that will be a key ingredient. Second is that there's a lot of work in Sri Lanka. Now, if the digital economy problem is to be solved, I can speak for government alone, there are lots of problems. And so there's no shortage of problems, right? And Industry has a lot of brains and there's no shortage of solutioning capability. Now, why don't these two things come together? Right? One is procurement. If government procures, and especially if it's a small problem you have, government sets out to procure a solution, you know the process, that it'll take so long to write the tender documents, go to bid, then
RFP qualification.
Yeah, and then half of the smaller companies will get disqualified because they don't have experience, and so on and so forth. So I'm also grappling with this. I don't have the answer, but I'm being very open here that there seem to be the potential for shortcuts. Because if you've got problems on one hand and talent on the other, why can't these two come together? It'll drive the industry, it'll create jobs, and it'll also solve problems fast. But that is where I think a lot of business process re-engineering in government is required. So we're at the start of this journey, and I think the most important thing is for all of us collectively to really examine why things don't work, as opposed to thinking, let's do something smart and it'll all happen. So why things don't work, one is, I think, the whole procurement challenge is one huge, huge problem, which we need to address. Like I said, I don't have the solution today.
Dr. Hans, maybe I'll take this opportunity to reposition that idea. There is this notion, and we might be able to dispel this myth, it might just be a myth. There is this notion among the smaller companies and the startups that this digital strategy, this overarching plan, will only benefit the big boys or the girls for that matter, not for the smaller companies. We may now just create few eagerly looking entrepreneurs, tech entrepreneurs who are reaching their 50s to actually be at the end of the gravy line. Is this a myth or a reality?
No, it's a myth. And we must make sure it's not a reality. So if you look at the architecture of the blueprint of the digital economy plan or the digital economy blueprint, one of the underlying principles and overriding principles is to open everything up. Yeah, so that you have, even when it comes to systems, that it's open source as much as possible. It's open technologies, open approaches, architectures, not vendor locked. So that if I just describe the layers of the blueprint, you've got the infrastructure layers like the telecom networks, the broadband networks, connectivity. Next layer, you've got the cloud and storage and computing. Above that is DPI, so digital public infrastructures, like the ID, the digital ID, the national data exchange, the payment systems, authentication platforms, digital signatures, e-lockers or verifiable credentials and personal spaces to manipulate your credentials, etc. But all these, the objective is to open up the APIs. So you open up APIs from all the layers so that you can create the solutioning marketplaces, the service creation environments, and open the digital infrastructure for the developers, startups, to develop solutions of varying complexity and impact for the layers that come above that, which are the industries and which are the government institutions. So getting this momentum going is, I think, the J curve, the inflection point in the J curve. So if you ask me whether there's ambition to enable every single talent in Sri Lanka to join this, yes, so that all these infrastructures would have their APIs and facilities open for companies large and small. So it's not just the big boss.
So with ambition, one should have resilience and willpower as well. And talking about willpower, Dr. Ajantha, Dr. Hans mentioned that we need to move out of this 22 million small market. We need to look at global opportunities. You are an active player in academia in the tertiary education sector. However, we cannot forget about our primary and secondary education. Our students need to have critical thinking and problem-solving skills. They need to be able to fail fast, learn fast, a mentality of that nature. Parents need to be exposed that you cannot look at conventional careers anymore. The world is a whole new ballgame. Amidst all of that, a very, very tough statistic is, in Sri Lanka, whilst we may have over 5 million passports, only 1.4 million people have traveled at least once overseas in their entire life. So how, I understand that you can watch a TV program, you can go to the internet and learn about countries and opportunities, but it's nothing like experiencing. So maybe you are meeting these talented students at tertiary level. But from an academia perspective, if we are to meet these audacious targets, how do we start from there?
I think, that is also another thing we are seeing in the recent past. Because the students, when like from grade 1 to grade 5 actually, onwards like coming on exam mentality. So they are really not trying to take challenges. So that I think we have seen in the industry also, like in the recent past recruits, like that's like, and we have seen in the undergraduate programs as well. So that that certain key elements in our education systems have been lost, or like we have thrown out because of the game, I would say, like a race. So that's very important, because today IT is all about like logical thinking, and then how fast you can do things and relearn and then come back, right? So that's where like it does not mean that only certain specific field of like, I would say like A-levels or whatever, just to example like physical science, it's not like those people, like anyone who has that logical thinking aspects, that you can come into that. People have shown that, especially on the startups, like how they have come, right? So yes, there is, I think the government is also looking at changing the education system also, like it's good time, because we have seen now that especially people do not try to take challenges, and they feel that things are all safe, but it's not the way, right? So you have to take challenges. So with that only, like we can get these entrepreneurial skills also coming up. So there is a, so then someone can ask like, okay, earlier I said like there is a tendency like people trying to come to entrepreneurship, but one thing is like, okay, there are people who have not gone into that, not risk-taking people, so that there are, but it's less. But however, I think more trends, and like during my time when I'm studying, and the time now the students who have, so that's like a lot of opportunities, like internet has made quite a lot of things like accessible for them. So that has made, I think, impact come towards this startup and doing business by themselves. But however, I think in the education system also, like if we can look from the lower grades onwards and try to focus and try to give them the idea like, okay, there are opportunities you can do. So like either phase, like I think that I feel like being from computing field, being like, okay, after A-levels, I have also come into that field, bit fortunate. But like the emphasis, or like I would say the encouragement coming, it's very, very less. Especially like school teachers are not, like because there are well-known like engineering, medicine, lawyer, right? So that's like, so those are the standard things like, okay, that's what all about, right? Because I can remember some of the students who have come in big schools, I would say, so they have just taken their stance and come into the computing field, but like sometimes like some of the teachers who have like forced them not to go in that area, like there's no future sort of. So that I think maybe from digital economy ministry side as well, like I think from the government, that's because always I was highlighting digital economy ministry, to give the importance of that, like what like students can go in and what avenues you have, right? But of course, yes, we have to make the system as you, the question you asked, like from the ground level onwards, we have to set, because sometimes now we have felt like at the tertiary level, it's a bit hard to mold some of them, right? Because they are not into that compared to like 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years back, like how students were able to take things, right? But like today, things have come easy for their fingertips, right? Today with generative AI and other things, like learning has made easy. But however, it's just, I think you have to, that thinking part has to come back, because if not, like it's not learning, right? That's a bad thing. So that, yes, I think I also feel that it has to, from the bottom, like from smaller gates, like we have to change that.
Dr. Ajantha, you meet a lot of talented students, and there is a growing importance because we have a lot of people from the industry, and they will also probably vouch for it. There is a significant importance of internships for them to get industry practice. It's not just about learning. The other thing is there seems to be a divide or a distance created on approachability of successful tech entrepreneurs. See, if you're a startup, can I call somebody, go and share my idea? Can I meet them? We talk about entrepreneurial ecosystem. We talk about supporting tech startups. But this distance seems to be there. How can we bridge that?
Yeah, first the distance comes with inclusivity. Like, okay, now because earlier I was talking with respect to my experience at University of Colombo, we are in the metropolitan area. But I think if you go to Jaffna or Ruhuna or like further, right? Whatever the size, like that's where like they don't have much opportunity. So this little bit unfortunate, I would say. So we are fortunate in being in Colombo, so that engage with the industry, right? Because there are less industry and the penetration is, I think there are some people are doing, they are like as a CSR work, but I think we have to get more and more, because that's where like we have to look into the total, like because that's we are looking at a workforce like not only Colombo based or Western Province based. So that to happen, yes, there is a gap, right? So that gap also has to be maintained, because the industry is also like more condensed in the Western Province, right? But like slowly now, I think we can see Kandy is booming up at the Gaul. So it's like it has to. That's where like I think government incentives has to come in, and the companies has to go there, and then that's where the talent is everywhere, and we can get that. If not like only to a certain region. So that one thing. The other thing, like now with the numbers going up, so this is another practical, I would say. So I'm now talking with respect to rather than being an academic, because then always we keep on asking, give us industrial training from the companies. But if you look at it from the center point, when the numbers are increasing and the industry also can't cope up with that number, like to train them, because they also do not have enough staff, right? So we have to come up with some other mechanisms. So we are trying to look at it from University of Colombo, UCSC point of view as well. Like, so we have to work with the industry, bring projects to the university, and do with them, because you can't always now expect, like, let's say now, I think just to share some thoughts, all state universities, we are taking around 4,000 graduates per year. That's a number, all like computing subjects, I would say. There are some computing subjects, like even University of Colombo, we have joint honors with the science faculty, and UCSC we do, so there are numbers coming up from that as well. But purely like if you take computing, we have about 4,000, just 4,000, maximum I would say 5,000, but roughly around 4,000 to 4,500. So it's a number. And of course the private sector is also like pumping numbers, right? So that with that number also coming up, so close to 10 to 20,000, I think the numbers are ranging. So that, like per year, I'm just saying, right? So 20,000 is a big number. I said like, we are trying to, going towards 200,000 number, but okay, this is per year I'm just talking about, right? Just like don't get confused with what Dr. Han said. So that if we have about 10,000, let's say, like if the government has 4,000, I think definitely in the private sector, I know that has more than 6,000. So then 10,000 numbers to cater our companies is not that easy, right? Every year, 10,000 numbers, you have to maintain that. So it's where like we have to come up with some other models and work. So industry and the universities has to collaborate and do projects together and try to fill that gap. And because if you can place them industrial placement and give them 6 months training, or like 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year max, but generally average is about 6 months, so then that will be good. But if you can't do that, we have to have alternative. That's where we have to look into that. Because currently we are feeling that most of the universities, I think they are having some challenges. Now these are the challenges part is coming, like placement, right? So yes, there's a gap as well as outset, but also overall there is a problem.
So interesting point, Dr. Ajantha, if I read it right. So A, this question of 200,000, why and how. Number 2, what is our short to medium term plan to approach that? Do we have the scale? Do we have the capability in order to cater towards that? So I'm coming to you, Sushena. Few things. Does it mean, based on the skills that are required, can this 3 to 4 year typical tertiary educational model be the only solution? Do we have an alternative strategy that we need to look into? And of course, I'm talking having been invited into a university setup, formal setup for this program, but let's be brutally honest here. How can we do this? Because you all are in industry. You have brain drain as well. Your retention is at a struggling point to retain people. I'm talking about the overall industry. So how do we match this is my first question. Second thing is, in terms of globally scaling as an organization, Dr. Ajantha talked about government incentives. What would be the wish list? Of course, whether you can achieve it or not is a different story. But it's good to have a wish list because we have policymakers also here.
Now, Nirmal, I think we should think slightly different. Of course, we had a problem of capacity for a long time. Our industry, because we are close to India, we see India is doing big things, big numbers. We are always talking about hundreds and thousands of people in their companies, and we don't have that much capacity. We are only having small numbers coming out from universities. But we have to be very mindful now. Now the game is changing. Game is changing in a different direction. These big numbers, sometimes, this is a very controversial topic. I don't want to talk about it without having data and all that, without having much knowledge about that stuff. But we have to be very mindful when increasing, because services sector might not need that many people in the future. But we will need good quality people who are in position to do a lot of innovative things with latest technology and all that. It's a bit premature to come in, but I think we should not only concentrate about capacity. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah,
Sorry,
so essentially, what would be A, do we need capacity? B, how are we building capacity? Are we going through the traditional learning route of 3 to 4 year degree, or do we look at a skill set oriented approach?
Yes. Now we tried various things, right? We tried conversion degrees, like non-IT graduates. We wanted to do a 1 year program and things like that. various things have been tried and tested. To some extent, things work, but if you try to convert totally a different discipline graduate to become a productive software engineer, it might not work, but in certain other areas like quality assurance or things like that, so depending on certain requirements, those things work. But good old days, if you take, when I came to the industry, we had only 1 year diplomas. At that time, there were no degrees in Sri Lanka. We did an NIBM diploma and went to the market, and we also did programming at that time, and we also developed systems at that time. So sometimes world's best programmers have not even gone to university. So it is, but if we need big capacities for the BPO sector or something like that, that might work. But we have to be a bit mindful that the landscape or the game is changing, and we will need different type of people. So we have to, this is the thing that we have to be aware of right now. Where the world is heading, where the requirements are coming, and we have to groom people in that direction.
Clear, Sushena. So
Yeah.
does it mean then, let's look at it strategically. Yeah. If capacity is an issue and we can't build capacity, can importation of capacity make this a place where you can attract good talent? So Singapore has a fantastic model. Right? Everybody wants to come to Singapore. Now Dubai is doing that. Very soon Saudi as well. Right? Is that a way forward? Because it was a very touchy subject, politically and otherwise, of that. No industry leaders were also gung-ho about it. But from a strategic capability point of view, in order to not miss out on the opportunity, is that what we need to do?
I think we have to play the game according to the requirement, right? So if we have a requirement, I think we have to be very open. We should not have this fear all the time. Like if we have to work closely, say now we are very close to India, and there's a huge resource pool there. And if our industry needs, I think, this is my personal view, not not even my company policy or anything like that. But I think we should have open policy when it comes to resources. It is controversial, I know. It is,
but it's the bitter truth.
Yeah, because if we want certain skill sets and if we can't find it here, and are we going to lose the opportunity at that time, or are we going to bridge that gap at that time and then to take things forward? Later, the people will benefit. I can give you an example, because when one of our clients, that is Cambio Healthcare Systems, in 2004, when they wanted to come to Sri Lanka, there was huge resistance from the company there, people there. They had only 30 people at that time in Sweden. And they said, you should not go there, like we will lose jobs, and they were not cooperating with our people and all that. But the senior management decided to come here and start the development center, R&D center. And as a result, now they have become the leading player in Sweden. And they have 400 people here, plus another 400 or so in Sweden. So the thing is, like, when you see like opportunities, like just because of short-term effects, like you should not kick it off because of sentiments. I think it is not how I think we should do things.
Thank you, Sushena. Dr. Hans, two important and interesting points. Some countries have developed their skill set, their overarching strategy based on benchmarking. They benchmark certain countries, they've re-refined their policy, and they've come up with a strategic framework. My first question to you is, are we benchmarking somebody, or is it going to be totally organic approach? Secondly, the importance of diplomacy, right? How do we use our wide diplomatic network in order to generate opportunities for Sri Lankan talent, to build that scale and the marketplace? What is the vision behind it?
So certainly, benchmarking has its value. And I mean, if you look at the whole galaxy of benchmarks that there are across the digital economy, ranging from connectivity all the way to software to digital government, there are many, many benchmarks which measure the efficacy of digital transformation in one country versus another. And if you look across, Sri Lanka is in the 3rd to 4th quartile in most. If you just have a color map, you'll see that Sri Lanka is in 3rd to 4th quartile, India would be in 2nd to 3rd, and then you've got the Singapore and the developed countries strongly in the 1st and 2nd quartile. So the ambition, we must have a relative ambition. I'll come to that.
Yep.
Why is relative important? Not only absolute. So you're very right. I think you have thrown a few darts at these numbers, right? Absolute numbers. Very fair. Because absolute numbers are targets that we set ourselves. It's like in a company setting a revenue target. But it's equally important to set a market share target.
Good.
Because that is relative. And you have someone to compete with, and in the digital space, as we all know, once you embrace digital and you embrace digital economy as your holy grail, then you're opening yourself up to global competition. The advantages that we enjoy or enjoyed as an island go away because you're fighting for talent. If we don't provide the jobs, our talent will either migrate or at least work for foreign companies while being here, and you're fighting globally for business. So therefore, these relative measures, which are benchmarks, are very useful, just like the absolute measures. So I even when I was running a business, I always looked at absolute and relative, and both have to be managed. Who are we benchmarking? I think for specific areas, we should benchmark the best, or benchmark those who have demonstrated out-of-the-box methods of achieving their benchmark positions, because we have a very short time frame. If you're looking at 5 years to leapfrog from where we are to the state that we envision, you have to benchmark the method those countries used as well as the strengths. So I'll take two very simple, very broad benchmarks. If you look at the internal economy, India is a good benchmark in terms of how digital has transformed the internal economy of India. And the social economy of India and that of Sri Lanka is also fairly similar. So India is a good benchmark from an internal economy perspective. But if you look at the external economy of Sri Lanka, then the impact or the importance of external activities such as tourism, such as ports and logistics, trade, these have a disproportionate impact on the Sri Lankan economy. So in that respect, we should be looking at a country like Singapore, which has the island characteristics, it has tourism, and also ports, logistics, trade, financial services, etc. So it's important to pick and choose. So yes, we are doing that. And behind the benchmark comes learnings. How did they do it? Can we do it better? Are there shortcomings in the way we do things today, etc. So that's an important part of the benchmark. Now, I just want to clarify on the absolute numbers now that we settled the relative targets. Sushena raised a very good point, and Prof. Ajantha also, on this 200,000. Does it gel with the doubling of capacity? Does it gel with a tripling of output? That's a fairly unscientific connection, I must admit. But it's a reasonable estimate that if you're tripling your output, add value, assume that value addition increases, that we move more in the direction of products and IP, etc. And therefore that you can manage with the doubling of capacity. Will we need that exact capacity? I personally do not like to run a business model from the supply side. That's what you're doing, right? You're trying to say, I'll push 200,000, I'll buy 200 cattle or whatever, and I hope that someone will buy my milk, which is not the case. You have to work the other way around. So what's important is the output target. And it boils down to creating demand. And it's on us as government, it's on us as academia and business and industry to create demand. Because if there is demand, then educational institutes will trip over themselves to create the supply. I think we have to be careful not to just create supply. And very important points that were raised. And your other question on, is the 4-year degree the right or the only approach?
The diplomacy, the importance of diplomacy.
Okay, that's a second. Your previous question, Sushena. Let me just add a little bit to that. In today's world, I think the evolution of technology is such that we really need to question that. Not to take away the value of a degree. I think a value of a degree from an esteemed institution brings with it the discipline, teamwork, the ability to work through problems, the training of an university education. And I think all of us look back 30, 40 years and then we say, I can't remember anything I learned. But, you say a big but I learned from university. I grew up in university, right? I learned to work with others, I learned to challenge and be challenged, and so on and so forth. So the value of university education or any form of higher education is important. But should the structure of these courses enable students to enter employment much earlier, not for internships, but into regular employment? Is that something like that even possible? It's something to think about. I've come here to throw questions, not to give answers. So can, for instance, a degree take 7 or 8 years and have an equal proportion of academic life and actually working, be a part of the productive workforce? And I think the technology evolution today is such, from a technology point of view, the cycles are such that it is possible. I feel that in 18 months you can have a very productive, employable resource. And equally, that resource will not lose out. Actually, the resource will benefit. Going away from industry for 6 months, back into academia, back out, back in, back out. Potentially over 7, 8 years, you have a very employable resource who has earned good money and has earned a degree as well. So these are just out of the box. I'm thinking I have no right to even suggest it because it's untested. I think we are talking untested concept. Okay, finally, your question on diplomacy. Yes, I think it's creating demand. So we need to market very, very aggressively. So our embassies, our diaspora, India, after all, India got to where it was, where it is today, and that first wave of BPO, KPO created almost completely due to their diaspora marketing India in the markets, in the countries where they were resident. They just collectively pulled all that work back into India. So I think our diaspora also needs to have that spirit and bring back as much as possible. So diplomacy is very important. Diaspora activity and diaspora activation is equally important.
Would you also agree on this notion, Dr. Hans, that even people involved in diplomacy need to be aware of the industry need to be aware of the opportunity, need to be aware of industry trends and the marketplace, because it's one thing to have awareness. Second thing is to be having that negotiation capability and positioning capability of why Sri Lanka. Are we missing that, Dr. Hans?
I wouldn't be able to comment. I haven't really examined what went right, what went wrong. But we also have to give credit to the fact that Sri Lanka has certain world-winning export industries. So there has to have been some good marketing which took place. You take the apparel industry, you take even the BPO industry. So I'm unable to answer that without clear knowledge, but I think common answer is whether it's the digital or IT industry or any of the other industries in Sri Lanka, tourism included, there is opportunity to do better on marketing. Sure. And our diplomats and our foreign services can be overweight, I think, on this going forward. But I'm sure they have the capability and the desire to do it.
To the audience, you've been very patient. I think we just have one more question to these two gentlemen, and then probably we'll give you an opportunity to ask your questions. I've also got some questions. I've been keeping on getting some messages as well. Dr. Ajantha, maybe we can get some mics around for the individuals. Very quickly. We're talking about the intergenerational workforce here. We've got two challenges, Dr. Ajantha. By 2030, 27% of Sri Lanka's population is going to be 60 years and above. You compare that with India, you're going to have roughly 600 million under 30 years of age. That's our closest competitor. So we've got a demographic challenge there. Secondly, in comparison to the previous generation, the expectations, the requirements, the patience of the new generation is somewhat different. So there's a collective responsibility, right? Even driving corporate sector organizations, private sector organizations, it's not easy anymore. You need to move away from that typical thinking, this is how we came through the workforce, this was our learning, so you need to go through this way. You will not be able to even retain them. So how can academia play a role in that, is my question.
Yeah, that challenge we have seen, and so as you said earlier as well, like learn and unlearn, because certain experiences are different, and because the environments have changed rapidly. I think, yes, as adults, we also have to do learning now with that, and when we take decisions and when we proceed with certain actions that we are going to take. So, yeah, it's not only like the people who start new, because however they are fresh, but yeah, we are talking about their mindset is different. And also we have to change ourselves, because that's where like we also have to adapt with it, right? So like, so that learning has to happen. That always happens, like I think if you take just rather than taking IT industry, like if the music industry if we take as well, like if you go back to 50 years back and look at the even the music and the styles, and then now it has been changed. So then, like if we do not adapt with the current trends as well as try to mix both, right? It's like it's a kind of a hybrid approach. Then, like we can be there together, right? So same thing happens like when it comes to our training and the thinking pattern as well. So yes, challenges are there, and then I think we have to use some hybrid approach where we have to also keep on learning, because we can't say this is how it has to be, because it might be the set theories now different.
Sushena, it goes to my previous question to you. Is there a wish list that the industry would require from the policymakers in order to be bigger and better? Or can you narrow down maybe the top 3 priorities, purely from an industry perspective?
Yeah, I think there are certain things that we can, I think, look into. One thing is basically when we take our policies, we have to set straight. One example, I'll take one example. I think now that people of Dr. Hans's caliber is there, these things will be addressing the. You now say, if someone wants to, an investor wants to come to Sri Lanka and start a company, the first question comes is what type of company that we should open? A port city company or a BOI company or a normal company? Like since they are coming from overseas, this ambiguity we have to clear. Right, so that is something that I thought I should raise today, even if you don't ask the question. I thought.
So what is easy and what is most tax efficient? That's typically the thought process.
Now both have tax benefits, and one now, and there's no place at the moment for a person to give a call and ask, okay, this is step A, B, C, D, E that you have to do if you want to come as an investor to Sri Lanka. So if you want to take the industry to a $5 billion industry, I think it is not an impossible task. It is a possible task because we have, the ingredients are there. Right? We have to put things straight and we have to do a bit of, doctor, you will have to do a bit of revolution to get things straight. The way that you run your company, if you can adapt certain strategies to the government as well. I don't know how easy or it is possible or not. But then I think we can make a huge difference. So that is, I am going out of the question, but I will say certain things I think will be important. It is important to the industry and people. So if we can get those ambiguity clear, that is one thing. And I have a question. This is related to our entire panel here and the audience here. Now we have a healthcare system, free healthcare system for a long time, but we still don't have a proper EHR system, right? So I heard a very pathetic story, I can say, like certain patients go to different clinics and take drugs from different clinics, and one set they use for their sickness, the other they sell. Now we have no way to identify that. We are giving everything free. Some drugs are very expensive ones. And similarly, when it comes to, now why can't a country, now when I was in Germany in 1995, I was working in a research institute. When I was there, I had a health card with a chip there. And when we used to go to the doctor, they just scan the card and he knows my eyesight to, blood type to, everything, the drugs if I am taking. Now, why can't we get a small system like that in place? Like, doctor, do you think that we have gone wrong somewhere, or like what's?
Yeah, so if you take EHR, or electronic health records,
yeah.
Projects of this nature and multiple projects running in parallel have been going on, I would chance a guess, at least for the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah. More than that, I think.
Yes, even more than that. So getting these projects across the line, procurement problem, consistency, setting of goals, and not solving the problem, simply building systems. So these are...
And people joining hands, doctor. I think other thing, it's doctors are in one side and the IT sector is in another side, and the policymakers are... Now these are the things I think that we should get straight. And I don't know whether these are, but I think these are things IT industry should address if we want to make a change.
Yeah, I think it's broader than the IT industry also. The problem you described goes back to, in my view, the problem we are trying to solve to digitize, to grow the digital economy, deliver convenient services to citizens, to remove friction, to enable single points of entry, meaning that you go to one place, you get everything done. And there's data sharing and all of that. It's only 25% or less a technology problem. It's a mindset problem. It's a culture problem. You take the average CIO, right? Apologies if there's an abundance of CIOs in the audience, and even engineers. I'm an engineer. We all pride ourselves in building things. And to say, this is my domain and I'm evaluated and I applaud myself on how big the system is that I built. Not how many others and other institutions and peer groups are using my system. That doesn't really matter, right? So the whole mindset is different. How many APIs did I open? How much data did I share with even my competitors? And to create a greater good. The whole kind of open source thinking, which is in the right direction. But when you look at organizational IT and organization or enterprise IT, this thinking is not very broad. I think I see a lot of silo work. So you're right, it's working together, it's spreading the message of sharing, of federation, and so many principles of IT systems where data is federated, you can share, give a good service to the citizens. So these are all concepts which we will work on. But it's certainly not a technology issue.
Do we at least see light end of the tunnel in the near future, Doctor?
Yes, it can be done. It's, I think, leadership. It's setting the right tone. It's defining what is right to do and defining success properly. Success is not building a system. And I mean, that has been a bane
is the easiest thing.
Yeah.
So it's about not who is right, but what is right and what is important at this point of time. So to the audience, who would like to take the first crack at asking a question from this eminent panel? Oh, we got a female. Lady over here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. So I was listening to the conversations, and I would like to share something that I experienced recently. I went to the commercial bank, and when I entered, I was requested to obtain a token. And I was very surprised that the person who guided me to take that token from a machine that stands by the door was the security guard. So my thinking, since I'm working for a company that is specializing in e-procurement, we are in a country where there is a high rate of corruption. I think most of us will agree with me. It is about how we bring the ideas not just to the crowd in Colombo, but to the people outside of Colombo as well. Now, if you look at PicMe, or if you look at Facebook, I think people even outside Colombo knows how to operate. It's at the end of the fingertip. So what I'm trying to say is, it is, I think, also something to do with the attitude, acceptance that we have to bring this technology, not just for us, but for the future generations to come as well. So my question is basically, if we keep thinking that, okay, it's very difficult to take the technology where the small-scale entrepreneurs might not be able to participate in government tenders, for example, we might never get there. But if we bring it to these small-scale entrepreneurs through, say, a mobile application where they just submit a quotation, with the basic information required. They don't need to log into a laptop and access a very comprehensive platform. We could make it possible. My question is, now with all these different softwares coming into the industry, how do we take this to the people outside of, I would say, outside of the tier 1, tier 2 companies and outside of the Colombo region? How do we educate the citizens that there are solutions as such available? Like what came to my thought is, let's say you have a similar, I don't know what that machine is called, like in the commercial bank, in certain government institutions, where these small-scale entrepreneurs who want to participate in the government tenders can go to that particular government institutions and get guidance to submit a quotation if required. That is the least that could be done so that everybody gets the opportunity to participate. Now, these could be entrepreneurs who would otherwise never get an opportunity to reach out to the government. So what I'm asking is, yes, what actions can we take to educate entrepreneurs across the country? And my second question is, how can we impose the government to take the education to the grassroots level? What I mean is, it's not just the students in the university levels, but also ensure that there is a computer lab in every school in the island, and also that there is certain level of computer literacy by the time they leave their high school education. Thank you so much.
So I'm assuming that question is directed to Dr. Hans, because definitely I am not qualified enough to give that answer. So maybe I'll add one more thing. Talking about, I think overarchingly she was talking about inclusivity, creating a level playing field, and also moving away from this thought process that at grassroots level, there is no awareness, there is no capability. Because India is a classic example. Even the street vendor or the coconut salesman is also working with the QR code system. What are your thoughts, Dr. Hans?
Yeah, so I think several valid points are there. Thank you. So first of all, on a notion that the grassroots or the outreach has a lower adoption rate or a lower appetite for digital, personally I'm not a subscriber to that. I have a lot of faith, and comes from where I came from, where the real success of dialogue in particular was due to enabling communities from all over the country to adopt digital technology. Not just the telephone, but if you look at even the little kades, their appetite to adopt digital tools, to become even agency banking branches using small POS terminals, all the appetite I saw and the energy which these micro entrepreneurs had to engage digitally was phenomenal. So I have, and that is one baseline faith I have, that if the experience is good, if the process is simple, if it is re-engineered with an inclusive mindset so that everybody can understand, everybody can adopt, Sri Lanka will fly with technology. That faith I have. So I'm not a subscriber to saying this is just in Colombo. On your specific one around procurement, I think you're pointing to an environment of agile procurement. And that, again, should not apply for just in the cities, but or to large companies. It should apply on an inclusive basis to draw entrepreneurs into that net. But what you're talking about is agile procurement processes, where you can move to outcome-based procurement. You can go towards, say, hackathon-based procurement. If you have a problem, you throw it to the ecosystem. Whoever comes up with the best solution, give them a chance, give them a little capital, and so on. Now, can government do that? Is what we need to crack that nut. We have to make government as agile in procurement as as the private sector. And that is, maybe you can never achieve 100%, but it is something which we must try to do.
Anybody else? Oh, yes.
Good evening, Dr. Hans. Thanks for this opportunity. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for taking this role, because I believe we have to run the country as an entrepreneur as well. So my question is, I am running a startup. I think this is the only startup running a solution for the government organizations. So I have been in the industry for almost 7 years. So I know everybody talks about digital transformation. It's not about digital solutions bringing, it's about the, that's why we use the word transformation. It's about how you implement it, adapt it, and change it, and continue it. So we talk about digital transformation on high level, national level, but when it comes to the grassroots level, sometimes this message is not being transitioned properly, and they don't understand the value of digital transformation. So there is a challenge. And also, even today I had a meeting with one of the municipal councils in Sri Lanka. They also want digital solutions, but in their comfort zones. So I think this is not the digital transformation we want. So they want the solution, but they want to have their comfort zones as well. So you might have different challenges. For example, give you one small example, they have emotional challenges. If you put a GPS tracker to a vehicle, within 1 month, the GPS tracker is vanished. So the state authorities has massive challenges of replicating it, and after 5 or 6 months, they will discontinue that. So how are you going to mitigate all these challenges? I know this cannot be done within 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So how are you going to transit this information onto the grassroots? Because the laborer is also part of this. So it's going to be a challenge. So that's one question. And the other question is about, you touch upon this, the procurement process. So we have a product for the government. So whenever we introduce this product to the government, based on the procurement requirements, we have to go on that particular method. So we, as a product company, solving a problem in the government, but when you go on to the procurement, our product has to compete with other service providers who will say, okay, we have the product, but they will say, we will build it and provide it. So what is your opinion on that? How can this startup be accommodated similarly?
Sorry, Dr. Hans, maybe if I can just add one more thing. It's also about replicatability. If one government institution has used the particular product, why not replicate it without trying to do it brand new? I think that's also another point that he probably missed out. Why do we need to go into fresh procurement over and over again?
So I think procurement policy of government, I mean, it's a constitutional, it comes from the constitution, right? The equity. So while we get very frustrated with it, it also brings equity, right? If it's done properly, there's a lot of equity there. It's a constitutional right of everybody to have that chance on every opportunity. Now, can we make it agile? Do the existing laws permit it, or should there be new laws, or should there be certain constrained environments in which you can use different procurement methodology? This is something that we look at and try to innovate, just like we're innovating in a lot of other areas. But it's a tough challenge, and that's why I'm bringing it out, because it's one of the elephants in the room. And unless we at least mitigate some of the shortcomings of the past and renovate or innovate on our processes, we will be held back going forward. So I don't have an answer. Is it possible even? I don't have an answer, because there's a lot of process engineering involved, laws potentially, but I can assure you that I will try. That I will try to crack these tough nuts that are there. The first question you had? So there's a lot of capacity building required. Knowledge transfer, and also training and building a belief that digital is better. Our people, I think the moment there is a clear digital solution, you take all the way back to 2004 e-channeling, it was adopted, right? And there was also a business model behind e-channeling. People pay, right? At that time, 200-300 rupees. Now I think even more. So people will pay, and if there's a business model, it becomes sustainable. So this education around the model, that convenience means time, and time means money, and therefore you need to pay back some part of that convenience dividend to someone who is giving you a solution. Our people have that, I think they'll rationalize. You brought up another important point on mandating effectively, right? I think it will be required. In certain areas, we'll have to say from 2 months from today, this is it. You cannot do something through a manual process, or any transaction above a certain value, no more cash, etc. So there will have to be a mix of mandating, a mix of convincing, and a mix of demonstration of clear value and convenience and superb experience. So as an industry, I think we have to deliver all of these things.
Thank you, Dr. Hans. I got a philanthropy of questions here, so I'm just trying to condense a few so that most of the common stuff are sort of. This is a little bit of a Sanat Wijayasuriya at his peak power hitting question, Dr. Hans. Let me try to average out the question. Let me put it that way. How was the execution roadmap for the 5 billion digital industry created? Was it developed by incorporating public input? As policy making plans, why are they hidden and not publicly available?
I think the exact strategies, which will be multiple strategies, like we have been discussing today, and the expected outcome of each of these strategies, the dependencies, the resources that are needed to back up those strategies, is something which will come out. And to be very honest, the detailing of that is currently in play. And given where we came from, economic recovery, a very tight fiscal space, where investments per se are limited for the country's capacity to put money into something. So we had to be very careful on where we put the dollars, whether it's coming from World Bank or ADB or the government resources. End of the day, it's hitting the balance sheet of the country. So the emphasis on digital economy growth here to generate that 15 billion of economic value with very little investment. Right? That is why it has been recognized as a key lever of economic recovery. Because if you are using methods which you put 100 and get 50, it might look good, but it's not going to help economic recovery. But if you can put 10 and get 100, those are the tools that we need. And I think digital, all of us here who believe in digital, I think intuitively you'd know that you can put 10 and get 100. Right? If you have a magic solution, or not magic, you have a clever solution, any of you who are startups, innovators, you know that, right? If you hit the nail on the head, you put 10, you can get 100. Now that is why it's a key lever of economic recovery. Point is to be a sharpshooter. So why haven't strategies been detailed? They will be, yes, that has to be done. There would be a lot of variation. Any of us who run businesses know a strategy needs to be agile. And if you say, I'm going to do this, approach this target with these 5 steps, and then at the second step you need to change, you must change. The danger sometimes in locking yourself in an environment where not everybody understands what you're doing to a particular set of steps, when actually you need to change and you need to be agile. As long as you reach the outcome, it doesn't matter, right? So that level of transparency will be there. Is there a science behind the 5? I think the 5 has been around for many years. This 5 billion has been mentioned, I think, even previously. So it's a reiteration of a target that we must meet to get to at least 5% of the total economy. Right? We have, if you look at exports, tourism, foreign remittances, and so on, this is the minimum, I think, that a strong digital talent base should bring back in terms of value.
We probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. just to be fair, that this is not choreographed, right? I will ensure that we ask a question from right at the back first, and then I'll come back to you for sure.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity. And this question is for Dr. Hans. So Sri Lanka is pushing for digital transformation, but large-scale tech projects often face challenges. So what are the biggest obstacles and how we can overcome them? And
Sorry, I didn't get it.
Sri Lanka is pushing for more digital transformation, but large-scale projects mostly often they face challenges. So what are the obstacles and biggest obstacles and how we can overcome this? And another question for Director of Creative Software and Director of UCSC. In one side, university students are developing, they are developing very good projects. But in one side, their idea is very great, but we can't transform that as a perfect digital business model canvas. And in other side, so many hackathons are happening. And the winners, they don't know how to execute their solution as a good level of business. And universities also, they are not, they are willing to place a hackathon, but after that, they are not supporting the students, and students, they are not aware to how to do that. Thank you.
So large-scale projects not meeting fruition or not delivering on the expectations. You're right, I think there are many. Starts from problem and identification of problem and design of solution. What problem are you trying to solve? Lack of focus on the end outcome, which is customer or citizen or business-to-business experience. What is the criteria of success? If you design it just on project milestones and you don't really care what happens once system is up, it will not generate revenue, therefore the organization cannot pay the maintenance, it doesn't have the money to upgrade, and then it all falls apart. So these are very typical life cycle problems, not too different to what you find even in the private sector. But I think the private sector has remedied itself over the last several years, and there's more focus on outcome. Especially during hard times, every dollar you spend is hard to come by. So these are the disciplines that we have to infuse. I'll just add one other piece, which is horizontal versus vertical. I mentioned earlier, there are islands of excellence, systems which are very good in the vertical sense, per industry, per service. But the horizontal sharing, the horizontal platforms, the digital public infrastructure that we are putting in, the horizontal layer is very weak. And therefore, you have these silos which in themselves don't deliver a composite citizen experience, because the citizen doesn't deal with silos. Citizen deals with life, right? You want your problem solved. If your problem goes across 5 institutions, you have to go 5 times, the problem doesn't get solved. I think it's basics of defining solution, defining success, planning your project to meet the outcome.
Just to add to a question, I think universities are good at teaching and giving the knowledge, but I think when you do projects, especially what you mentioned, in partnership with the industry, jointly, so that's where we can get the maximum where, because the business entities will know how to position it and the scalability of that, and then how it can really take it to the next level. So I think universities, when they are doing projects, it has to be always do jointly with the industry. So that's where we can take the maximum benefit of that.
Yeah. I think the question is clear, because students come out with project ideas. Sometimes they are very good, sometimes not very practical. But if you have a good product idea, I think best is you have to, now you must be concentrating on a particular vertical or domain. You have to find, this is what we discussed at the beginning, find the right party and pitch it and see how it is, because we really don't know what the product you're talking about, but if you can, if students can, we have a thing called Spark, Creative Spark. In that we do a bit of guidance for students. Now some, in certain cases, we have partnered with students and we are investing on certain products. So if you come out with that and if you pitch that, get an opportunity, get an appointment and pitch it, we can see what we can do. We might be able to link you up with others. Now, we wanted students to come and we gave a space. Dr. Ajantha, I think you can remember at one stage we gave a space in our office for UCSC students to especially come and be there. What we wanted was our students to meet our clients, because our clients come time to time to the office, because we are working with 30 different product companies, and these products have certain requirements that they are in the back burner sometimes. They are, due to lack of resources and all that, they are not developing it, or it's not in their critical path. But if you can, we have created basically a platform for you to meet people. End of the day, networking is very important for you to take the product forward. So you have to find, so best is you pitch it to potential people that you think is the right people, and then I'm quite sure you'll find a way to take it forward. But you have to try. It will not just happen. You have to explore and see what is the right place to pitch the idea. If that happens, it'll fly if your idea is good. And sometimes the corporate sector, if you do that, if the idea is not good, or you have to do fine tuning, or you have to slightly change it to a different, that advice also might come.
There is a caveat, because we are speaking to technology professionals. Please do not hashtag me tomorrow and say, one Baldy never gave us opportunity to ask our questions. We came from 6 o'clock to ask questions. I'm struggling and grappling with time. So very quickly, probably 3 questions. Make it short and sweet. We start with the gentleman behind there, just for equity purposes. Then coming to this gentleman. And this gentleman, just to ensure that I was not discriminatory to this side. Over to you, sir. Brief as possible.
Hi, so my question is to Ms. Sushena. So we are seeing a lot of Dragon's Den content and also Shark Tank content. So if other countries can do that, and also I think Sri Lanka, it should be possible, because we have seen a lot of singers lately, but it started back then in Sirasa came up with something. So I think the equation, on the equation of demand and supply, the execution, we talked about that it's not that supply that we can meet that 5 billion. It is that demand. So if we create demand from something like a platform and a framework to, with that said, brother, like to get entrepreneurs and startup founders like ourselves, like 23, 25 years old, if there is a framework and a platform, and if the investors can come up to that platform too, with the government's help, and also, Sushena, I think that's a good investment opportunity to, like, in Sri Lanka's industry experts, like Sushena itself, and there are a lot of founders and startups in big names.
No, so I think that's a very good idea. I think the question is clear what you are making. I think we have to we all should get together and see. I think once there was a program like that, I can remember DFCC and some people from banks and all that were there, but I don't know where that didn't, that stopped somewhere, I think.
Just to add, because I have two hats, like it's not from UCSC side, so from Computer Society of Sri Lanka. So there is a Digital Investment Summit. Of course, that's like what we are trying to do in the Computer Society of Sri Lanka is to promote entrepreneurs, come up with their products and try to give pitch your product. And we try to do like attract investors. At the moment we are doing from within Sri Lanka, but we are trying to look at it to, with the help of the ministry to bring some investors from overseas as well to give you opportunities. So please look into that. Like that opportunity, like we can look at it so that we need more and more. Right? That's why like about 3 years back, Computer Society of Sri Lanka started in a small scale Digital Investment Summit we had last year with the Minister of IT as well together. So those opportunities I think I also would like to add. So more and more is required so that able to pitch and get some more.
I think if you can link up, I think with a TV channel, I think it's the best to start something like this. I am quite sure there will be investors interested in investing in good product ideas if it is there. There are no two words because that is the future. Like if we are to go to 5 billion, we can't go with the services industry. But if we have right ideas, then quite. Yeah, this is what is happening in other countries. Right? So we have to somehow bring Sri Lanka also, take Sri Lanka also to that. That is what is happening in. Yes.
I'm sure Dr. Hans might also take notes, the importance of a national platform to come and pitch your ideas, almost like a miniature version of a Silicon Valley approach on getting the ecosystem together with a common notion of supporting startups and great ideas. It's not about investment alone. It's about getting them pitch ready. It's about getting them to look at solving problems and also convincing. So there's a different skill set that comes about. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all the feedback. Talk about the Digital Investment Summit. I'm from fintech industry. We have an innovation for the banking sector connecting a marketplace solution called AnyBank Q, solving the financial literacy. It's a big gap, and in fact I got late because I came out of a visiting lecture to one of the universities. Just a question about what application you use. Out of 100, only 2 people raise, they use some QR application. So that's where the problem is. If we as a country, from President His Excellency is looking at cashless economy, a platform like ours can really go to grassroots and educate, starting from the schools to university students to start using. There are about 30 QR applications in our platform and about 20 digital banking applications. And talk about working in silos, yes, banks are working in silos. We have done that part. I think we have to really work on giving these products to the entire country and get them to use it. And that's what India did, and President Modi became the influencer. And they promoted all the applications, including connected to UPI. So in fact, we are innovating something like Dr. Hans just mentioned. So we are innovating within the framework, something that really go into grassroots levels as well. But in a nutshell, financial literacy is a big challenge.
Anybody would like to comment on?
So can contact me. Fintech, I think.
Yeah. So overwhelmingly, there is agreement on that point. So there is no shadow of doubt.
I think the problem is clear. I think Dr. mentioned the answer at the beginning. So he has done quite a bit in his past life, I would say, taking these things to grassroots level. So now it's, yeah. Let's see how things happen.
Yeah, over to you, sir.
Thank you for the chance and the wisdom that you will be sharing, gentlemen. My question is on behalf of the SMBs, specifically the ones that are targeting foreign clients. So we were discussing about penetrating in the foreign market. My company is based in Sydney. We started in 2021. for 1 year, we were finding it very difficult to tap into that market because we are Sri Lankans. Right? So now then the solution that we came up was, we had a great product, and we have a great product, but we couldn't pitch it there. Then eventually we went looking for a foreigner, a native Australian, found the right people, we were able to tap to that market, and now we are doing well. So my question is, when you asked Dr. Nirmal to raise the hands, there were about 50% who had raised hands, but I'm pretty sure maybe less than, from that 50%, maybe about 20% have been to the Australian market, or I mean a foreign market. That is because people in Sri Lanka find it difficult to tap into foreign markets from here. How does the government support that? Is there an initiative to support such cases? And what wisdom do you have to share with us? Thank you.
Yeah, I think the first challenge that we have to work on is the capital mobility. Meaning, if there's a startup company in Sri Lanka with the potential to go out, then can we afford the exit of foreign exchange to support that company overseas? So if you were to ask me as an individual, I would say yes, that we should. But we are working within capital constraints. Now, how we make this possible is something the government will look at in a constrained environment that we are working in. So marketing is one thing, awareness, and I think digital players can do that anyway, because in today's environment of social media, there are marketplaces, there's a lot of exposure. So making awareness, I think, is only one part of the problem. But how do you finance that entry into a foreign market? So either you have to attract foreign capital in that market, but still it's not easy for a Sri Lankan company to go set up, incorporate in a foreign market without being able to take money out of Sri Lanka. Right? So coming out of an economic crisis, it's not a slam dunk that you can just open the gates and say you can transfer your capital overseas. That will not be wise. But under what conditions, and how do we evaluate the most promising startups and find a way? Again, we are on this journey just 3-4 months, recognizing problems, admitting to the gaps that we have to bridge. Exactly how much of it is possible still is work in progress. But your point is very right.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long night. The gentleman over here, first and foremost, kudos to the alumni of the University of Colombo. It's not easy, to bring in a crowd on a Thursday, also busy people, but also special thank you to you, Dr. Hans, for accepting the challenge, whatever made you do that, and being authentic enough to come and say where we are, what are the things that we need to do, in all honesty, and what are some of the quick wins that we may have to do. So one thing I'm taking home today is that there's ambition and intent, there is definitely work in progress, and there is a continuous improvement model, and there's also somewhat of an assurance that there will be inclusivity when it comes to decision making. So in order to conclude, I'll probably go back to you, Dr. Hans. So when you were leading an organization, your company's tagline was your future today. Dr. Hans, I'm asking you as our digital strategy head, what is Sri Lanka's future today when it comes to this 5 billion?
I think it spells a lot of hard work, collective thinking, innovation, and inclusion. In this case, inclusion across all strata of the development stack that we have, in people, in technology, in areas that we attack. So the doubling of the capacity and tripling of output in 5 years, given global growth, should be doable or has to be doable. Right? Because if we look at, even from a GDP ratio point of view, and look at how much wealth is going to be created in the next 5 years using technologies like AI and IR4 and all of that. You just look at the number. Take our fair share of that. It will exceed 5 billion. So we have to at least get our fair share. But we are at somewhat of a disadvantage, coming out of an economic crisis, small country, somewhat swamped by large neighbors and active ecosystems. So we are climbing, but we shouldn't be discouraged by the number, because fight for our fair share and ensure we get it.
Let me now pose a challenge to the organizers. We got the head here. There is intent there. There is genuine passion. Can the USC alumni create a common platform for all the participants plus the people who couldn't come to share their thoughts, share their ideas, share their best practices, so that this gentleman can drive his team, have one repository of all the information. He will put in millions of people to analyze that, so that we are creating a conduit. In that sense, we'll not only come and listen, we've not only shared our thoughts, maybe after this, but we've also actively contributed. Now, if this gentleman does not, with his team, be cognizant of those, then the next time he's invited back again, right, I will be there and you all can be here. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dev Silva and our esteemed panelists for such an engaging session. I kindly request our panelists and the moderator to remain on stage as we transition to the next segment of our program. Now, it's time to extend our sincere gratitude to our panelists and our moderator for these contributions today. To present the tokens of appreciation, I now invite the representatives of the UCSC Alumni Association. The President, Mr. Anushka Mendes, the Secretary, Mr. Parakrama Ratnayaka, the Senior Treasurer, Dr. Kasun Gunawardana, and the Vice President, Mr. Madhuka Bodhinayak on stage. Thank you so much. As we conclude today's event, I now invite Mr. Parakrama Ratnayaka, the Secretary of the UCSC Alumni Association, to deliver the vote of thanks.
I'll make it very short. I know everyone is hungry, including myself. Our heartfelt gratitude goes to our esteemed panelists for joining us today. And thank you very much, all the invitees and the participants who joined us. And our digital media partner, Athukorale, thank you very much, and Daily FT. And a big thanks should go to Dr. Ajantha and the UCSC staff members for providing us with this venue to hold this event at this scale. And like our president said, I'm delighted to announce you that we are planning to have this event annually, right, to do a post-budget analysis on the IT industry and also to discuss the progress of hitting these large numbers. And also I would like to highlight the fact that as UCSC alumni, we are more than happy to be the platform in connecting the industry and academia experts with policymakers to grow our digital industry day by day. So with that note, with that invite, with that hope to join us or see you again in a similar event. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a pleasant evening. Thank you.
This officially concludes today's proceedings. Thank you so much for all of you for your participation and intellectual engagement. We invite you all to join us for refreshments on the rooftop, where you will have the opportunity to continue networking in a more relaxed setting. Yes, the rooftop is one level up to this level, current level you are here. Thank you so much for all of you again.